Thank you, Paula. Good morning. It is so good to be making community here together, whether you are here in person or on Zoom. My name is Cathy Cánepa, and I will get to be our service leader today. And I'm delighted that our speaker today is our own Jurgen Ahlers. He will explore the use of labels, labels that define us and labels that divide us, as dangerous social trends, and he will look to alternatives. Now, after the service, with those on Zoom, please know you're invited to stay connected and have discussion with others in the main room. Also, if you're visiting and new, would you write your name in the chat box and where you're from and how you heard of us? And that way we can greet you afterwards. And those here, please remember we have coffee and cookies afterwards. And please take your coffee and go visit the welcome table. There's a lot of information and opportunities there, including these two events. The second annual 2K Walk for Autismo will be held April 20th, Saturday. It will go from the Jardín to Zeferino Park. There is a 400 peso donation, which will also get you a t-shirt and a water bottle. So you need to sign up online, and I believe Melinda McGinn is here, and she'll be at the table to answer questions afterwards. And if you like to sing and have fun and might be interested in being part of a singing group or choir for our fellowship and maybe sing at some of our UU services, then you are invited to an event called Singing for Your Supper. It will be Wednesday, April 24th at Tom and Malcolm's home. It should be a great evening, and they will have the Reverend Maddie Sifantos, who will be a guest minister in April. She's a wonderful musician, and as part of her ministry, she's led UU community singing groups to wonderful success. So she's going to share her talents with us and get us singing. So please contact Diana Amaya to let her know that you will be coming. Okay. Now, if we have any visitors here today, would you please stand so we can see who you are and get to invite you to coffee out? Wonderful, welcome. Thank you. Okay. We do record our Sunday services, and if you go to our website, UUFSMA.org, you can find previous services there. And while you're on the website, check out the various events that are sponsored and also how to become a member. Our chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And we light our chalice today with words from La Sociedad Unitaria Universalista de España. Lighting this chalice, we invoke the presence of love in our hearts to share it today among us and then spread it to the world. Therefore, let nobody feel a stranger in this circle, and may all feel welcome. Al encender este cáliz, invocamos la presencia del amor en nuestros corazones para compartirlo hoy entre nosotros y propagarlo después al mundo. Así pues, que nadie se siente extraño en este círculo y que todos sean bienvenidos. Our opening words are from Carl Sagan. Up there, in the immensity of the cosmos, an inescapable perception awaits us. National boundaries are not evident when you view the Earth from space. Fanatical ethnic, religious, or national chauvinisms are a little difficult to maintain when we see our planet as a fragile blue crescent fading to an inconspicuous point of light against the bastion and citadel of the stars. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 347. It is in your gray hymnal. And remain standing for the covenant, please. invite you all to join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant. This is our promise that we aspire to, of how to be in relation to each other and the larger world. Jurgen will lead you in English, and I will lead us in Spanish.
We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive in our passion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio. Please be seated.
Well, good morning. I'm Tom Rossiello, the Minister of the Fellowship. And as you know, this fellowship strives to be a caring community. We want you to know, whether you're with us by Zoom or you're here in person at the Aldea, we are here for you, especially in difficult times. And if you need pastoral care or just some help from our care team, we want you to let us know. Please contact us, me or the care team. The information on how to do that is on our website, UUFSMA.org. We now enter into a sacred time in our service, when we share significant joys, sorrows, and concerns that our members and friends are experiencing with their community. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern that you would like me to share in an upcoming service, please email it to me. Or if you'll be at that service, you can write it on a card, as several people have done this morning when you enter the room. Also, if you're with us via Zoom, you can now share by typing your joy, sorrow, or concern into the chat. And as we share each joy, sorrow, or concern, Cathy will light a candle, acknowledging that that person, or that prayer, or that thought is held by all of us in our hearts this morning. It's written in the Talmud, when we share a joy, the happiness is doubled, and when we share a sorrow, the pain is cut in half. May that be so for our community this morning. Our first candle is one of great joy. Alicia Gonzalez yesterday had a big party celebrating her 90th birthday. I don't know. Feliz cumpleaños from all of us. And Hillary lights this next candle in remembrance of her sister-in-law, Tessie, who passed away this past week from an inoperable liver cancer. Hillary had shared that journey with us in the past, and she tells us now that her sister-in-law spent just 4 days in hospice care, and in Hillary's words, she's at peace and winning all Trivial Pursuit games in heaven, as usual. We light a candle in memory of many of you, someone many of you knew. I knew from our neighborhood, Jack Foster, a longtime resident of San Miguel who passed away recently. And now we have 3 birthday candles that are coming up, and they're all hermanas. So we're going to start by lighting a candle for Ellie's birthday. That's Friday. Congratulations. And for Donna Sherbrooke, who I believe is today. Happy birthday. And for Jennifer Young Hall, who has a big decade birthday, the 19th. Let's see if we have any on Zoom, if I can figure it out. I don't see any. I hope I'm not missing something. Okay. All right. Let us light a candle now for all those in our community who are suffering from either physical or mental health challenges and are being quite quiet about it. Of course, our concerns are not limited to just our own community. Once again this week, we light our blue and gold candle in support of the people of Ukraine and for all those who've died or lost loved ones or whose lives have been upended by the unjust and unprovoked war in Ukraine. Many of us on the news yesterday witnessed the attack on Israel. We light the other large candle of great concern for the Israelis and for the escalating violence in the region. We hold all those who are living under the constant threat of violence, those who have been and are suffering as a result of this war and the lack of humanitarian aid, especially the children, in our hearts. We fervently pray for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages, and the medical help and food and clean water will be allowed to reach those in such dire need. We pray also that the cycle of attack and counterattack will cease, and that some path to a peace that recognizes the right and equal worth and dignity of all people will emerge. And as always, our final candle is for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns held deep in our hearts, but which remain unspoken. We hold all these joys, sorrow, and concerns together. May we resolve to honestly face our own challenges, to share in the love and do our part in growing and strengthening this community, to stand for justice and with the oppressed, and to support, comfort, and assist those who are experiencing difficult times.
For our meditation, please take a breath, settle in your seats, breathe deeply, eyes open or closed as you wish. The great Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, tells this story. A young woman wrote about finding herself in a small town in the Middle East, surrounded by people jeering, yelling, and threatening to throw stones at her and her friends because they were Americans. Of course, she was terrified, and what happened to her is important. Suddenly, she identified with every person throughout history who had ever been scorned or hated. She understood what it was like to be despised for any reason: ethnic group, racial background, sexual preference, gender. Something cracked wide open, and she stood in the shoes of millions of oppressed people and saw with a new perspective. She even understood her shared humanity with those who hated her. This sense of deep connection, of belonging to the same family, is the awakening of the great heart of compassion. Please remain seated as we sing together Spirit of Life, number 123 in your hymnal.
Sing that afterwards. Yeah. No?
Spirit
Now, please respect the silence for those who will come forward to light a candle of joy or concern. Please join Jurgen and me in responsive reading number 576 in the Gray Hymnal. I will read the first part, and Jurgen will lead you in the response. Number 576, A Litany of Restoration. If recognizing the interdependence of all life, we strive to build community, the strength we gather will be our salvation. If you are black and I am white,
it will not matter.
If you are female and I am male,
it will not matter.
If you are older and I am younger,
it will not matter.
If you are progressive and I am conservative,
it will not matter.
If you are straight and I am gay,
it will not matter.
If you are Christian and I am Jewish,
it will not matter.
If we join spirits as brothers and sisters, the pain of our aloneness will be lessened, and that does matter.
In this spirit, we build community and move toward restoration. Good morning. The human brain is truly an instrument that has been shaped over millions upon years. And it is our brain that has made possible the complexities of human evolution, a history of progress and regression. Yet, after scientists examined Einstein's brain, comparing it to hundreds of other brains, they concluded that on average, we only use a relatively small percentage of our brains for our daily living. Their conclusion further established that much of our thinking is reactive to impulse stimuli, primarily governed by our five senses, our intuition, and our emotions. Just when stress in the form of fear of things known and unknown becomes a dominant force, we tend to avert to more primitive patterns of behavior such as fight or flight response. It's no secret that since the dawn of the industrial era, traditional, that is to say, established norms of behavior catapulted increasingly into varied, even challenged norms of behavior with a consequence of confusion and definitely stress impulses. Recall for a moment one of my absolutely favorite musicals, Fiddler on the Roof, when Tevye, in such a poignant manner, acclaimed that tradition and its despondency of slackening off. I believe it's not an oversimplification to say that, for the most part, humans have great difficulty processing rapid social change without experiencing significant anxiety, resulting in confusion, a sense of self-righteousness, personal despair, and often deeply seated resentment, and even hatred toward those displaying, for example, nuanced behavior or points of view. Such is the situation we find ourselves in today. cultural, and political fault lines are converging in all parts of the world, resulting in social, economic, ecologic, earthquake-like eruptions profoundly challenging our comfortable norms of existence that only a couple of generations prior could not possibly have been imagined. So, what does this brief overview of our history have to do with the subject of labeling folk who are different from us, thus tearing away at the delicate fabric that has been holding our society together? I suggest that labeling or othering of the unfamiliar is like a malignant cancer threatening the well-being of all existence. Labeling those we're not comfortable with, well, it dehumanizes them. Labeling disenfranchises us as a cohesive, creative community. Just one rather pregnant example. As a former academic theologian, I've been only too keenly aware of how, since the inception of the Constantinian era, when the church became the dominant socio-political force, how labeling others became an intentional norm. To put it succinctly, whether Coptic, Orthodox, Roman Catholic, or in our time evangelical, fomenting fear became completely acceptable. You were an apostate if you did not accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And you were damned to all hell for all eternity if you did not. And for those who did toe the line, who confessed Christ as their Savior, enjoyed eternal salvation and bliss. Up there, I guess, somewheres. You know, in the Dark Ages, we all know that people of different opinions than the norm were often called heretics and were tied and burned at the stake for their unique original viewpoints. This trick of fomenting fear by othering, making others feel guilty, inadequate, less than human, was quickly adopted by a myriad of social and political forces for running rampant even into our own time. Back in the 70s, in the 1970s, I noticed something really had me curious. Within a few years, in the mid-70s thereabouts, I saw a trend of wearing boldly marked garments. Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, and so forth. And I decided, I'm not going to be a walking billboard for anybody. Additionally, piquing my curiosity about the same time, the fascination with celebrities. People magazine began publishing around that time, and other copy or look-alike magazines were becoming ubiquitous, and people were anxious to read the latest about this or that personality or celebrity. And I was wondering, possibly, just possibly, Might there be an underlying sense of personal emptiness, or a hollowness, or a lack of identity creeping into the Western psyche? As you recall, the 70s were preceded by the so-called turbulent 60s. We had the civil rights movement, which drastically altered the political landscape. For example, particularly in certain parts of the US, the Dixiecrats turned Republicans. The tragic assassination of JFK and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. The Cold War seemed to become at its high point with the Vietnam War, tearing the nation apart. Traditional privileged norms of WASP, that is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, were being challenged by Black Power, as was the slogan, "America as the beacon of democracy." And anti-authoritarianism became a slogan heralded by the SDS on college campuses, and finally, and not leastly, gay liberation, beginning with the Stonewall Revolt in New York City, just to name a few. Well, all this turbulence climaxed in the Democratic Presidential Convention of 1968. And who won that presidency? You all know it. Richard Nixon, in a landslide, on the platform of law and order. And for many in the US and in Europe, 1968 was indeed an existential turning point. Social change, you see, is unsettling. Rapid social change is unsettling, happening way, way too rapidly for most people who want to feel comfortable. Fast forward to our time today. The rapidly accelerating climate crisis, due primarily to the multifaceted exploitation of fossil fuels in the form of energy and plastic production. The massive displacement of people, migrants, due to shifting climate patterns, making arable land nearly impossible. And social media and the World Wide Web, with broadcasting rampant disinformation and religious fanaticism in multiple traditions throughout this world. All and more of these global crises contribute to the rise of despots and oligarch elites who capitalize on fear-mongering, with labeling as a major tool to advance their self-aggrandizing agendas. Of course, I realize that even in our own midst, there is probable comfort amid all this compounding crisis to simply seek out our own secure bubble, whether it's blue or red, Christian or Muslim, many perhaps most quietly subscribing to some form of labeling of those folk or social segments we perceive as adversaries. For example, you will all recall when Hillary Clinton was overheard referring to a certain element of the US electorate as deplorables. I had a sinking feeling that it signaled a major diminishment of her electoral aims, giving way to her opponent, who of course pounced on it as an opportunity to deepen the building resentment within the US heartland. as evidenced by the scorching popularity of the Tea Party and the right-wing conservatives, who were all about labeling the East and West Coast elites in that political arena right through to this day. Labels of referencing, for instance, migrants approaching our borders, the US borders, as murderers, rapists, and most recently, vermin and animals. Well, the stoking of fear and a sense of victimhood was the consequence, creating a massive political movement many have simply labeled a personality cult. So how do we live beyond labeling? I believe we all, no matter our religious or political persuasions, we all have a yearning for a deep sense of belonging, to feel safe and warrant a future where our children's children can flourish. If you're like me, and here I think I speak for the vast majority of people who inhabit this planet, I'm often hooked by when I contemplate the stars on a clear, dark night, and the images of the Hubble telescope have deepened this mystical intrigue even further. Here's a photograph of a galaxy of immensely powerful gases, millions of stars and planets all held together, too fierce, by a force too fierce to fathom, ever unfolding, giving birth to millions of new stars and planets. I find this symbol simply mesmerizing. It represents to me the universal principle of life, ever changing, ever giving birth to new possibilities, yet somehow held together by a force at its center. If we want to contemplate the vastness of this fascinating phenomenon, we can, with a good helping of curiosity, imagine something totally new emerging from a gigantic star millions of times larger than our own sun. What if we were to apply this analogy to our own constantly unfolding lives? With all its complexities and established comfort levels, what if we, like little children, could stand in awe, in constant curiosity about the events shaping our wider world, open to surprises and discovery, without pre-established norms, prejudices, and conclusions about how we should be conducting our lives? My friends, the time we live in today, in 2024, perhaps it's the most challenging to individuals and the planet as a whole in all of human history. It demands that we explore a way to genuinely embrace the flourishing of diversity, be it among humans or all living things produced in the ever-evolving process called life. On this extraordinary, grand blue marble suspended in space. Because if we don't, we simply remain content to live out our lives in our comfortable, distinct bubble, or whether it's red or blue, if we continue to feel snugly secure in labeling those we don't like or who are different from us, we will ultimately destroy ourselves and everything with it. So what are the tools? What are the tools we have to overcome this trap or entrapment? We need to build more sound, more humane future for everyone. It's having our core, deeply rooted, life-affirming values that hold out the promise, that propel us toward a more constructive, holistic, and humane future. Not a destructive, dehumanizing, win-lose future. We as UUs are fortunate to have two values at our fellowship's core. The first one is embracing the web of the interdependent web of life, and the other is honoring the worth and dignity of every individual. It's these values that drew me to this fellowship and continue to draw me with fascination and intrigue and assurance. It's perhaps easy to repeat these phrases and affirm them in our covenant and guiding principles with good intention, but to truly live them poses great, perhaps overwhelming challenges, and yet also tremendous opportunities of a promising, thriving way of living. In broad strokes, in order to live a life beyond labels, I would suggest we take a sobering look at events of our time and begin to incorporate into our lives daily practice of empathy, of finding ourselves in the position of those we might call our opponents, or even adversaries. Practicing empathy first and foremost with those close to us, of course, whether family or our inner circle of friends, but then the challenge deepens, learning to practice empathy with those outside of our comfort zones, people we tend to have significant differences with. To be sure, the strategy of empathy will take us through difficult existential trials, challenging our well-established ways of thinking and living, the very fabric of our being. But I believe the success factor of practicing empathy will be strengthened if we learn to lean in to that which we fear. Leaning into that which most unsettles us, which yank us out of our hallowed comfort zones, will most certainly impact possibilities of new understanding and behavior previously held as impossible. I won't accept the old adage of teaching an old dog a new trick. First of all, we're not dogs. And secondly, I adopted a rather aging golden retriever about 3 years ago, and I've taught him several tricks. But, on a more serious note, if we can use this image of the galaxy and of our childlike fascination of this image and apply it to our world, fully affirming our common humanity and the maze of predicaments that we've all contributed to putting ourselves in, we stand a chance to form a radically new beginning, new beginnings of flourishing. We certainly don't need to engage our personal enemies in name-calling, in labeling them derogatorily. Instead, we can courageously concentrate on building bridges of common understanding and a common mission to forge a new way of living together. Don't you all agree that building bridges always takes more brains, more planning, more grit than destroying them? As a person deeply committed to focusing much of my energy on confronting the immense threats that global climate crisis assaulting us, a crisis created by human ingenuity and living right here in still beautiful San Miguel, being fully aware of impending local and global catastrophe, I've become convinced over the past several years that our present relatively cozy way of living, bred by the American dream of independent habitation, for example, each of us owning our own house, our own car, will not be sustainable in the near and in the distant future. I think that there are naysayers, of course, to be found everywhere. It's people who say, it's not possible to live without my own home or my own car. I believe that's even possible within our own fellowship. Although we're a very creative bunch, I've definitely noticed that. We tend to think out of the box. But just think of the possibilities. We're living right here in a bicultural environment, threatened by diminishing potable water, fresh, healthy air to breathe, and arable land to feed everyone. If, however, we take a principle of embracing the interdependent web of life and truly honoring the worth and dignity of every individual, just think what might unfold if we were to translate that into a radical new way of life. If we were to place our often subconscious habit of labeling or othering into the dustbin of our former lives and envision gathering folk of divergent cultures, languages, customs, and economic status into a common interdependent way of living, with the goal of establishing a healthier, more just, more flourishing future for everyone. Just think of the multitude of new possibilities that life could offer. In closing, I want to encourage those of you who might be curious enough as to where I'm headed with all this. I want to encourage you to check out a long-range planning report that our fellowship produced about 5 years ago, just at the eve or the dawn of the pandemic, namely the Envisioning Our Future report, which you will find if you go to UUFSMA.org. Under the top bar, under More, you will see that report, Envisioning Our Future. Happily, our fellowship is well on the way of implementing quite a few of what back then we envisioned, we dreamed about. I'm not going to go into details. You all heard about this over the last few weeks. And yet, there's more work or more dreams to be realized. If you go to the final portion of that report that says 7 years plus, which would mean today, in a couple of years, we should begin exploring an intentional, intergenerational, intercultural living collective, which, by the way, wouldn't sacrifice private habitation, no, but would capitalize on the richness of interdependent, intercultural community living off the grid, cultivating arable land that produces healthy food, potable water, and shared community life, practicing daily by the values and principles that we establish in our fellowship. and have been since the dawning of this fellowship. I look forward to sharing more of this theme of forging a new, more promising future way of life in a presentation that I will hold here on the first Sunday in June, on June 2nd. Stay tuned. And now, please rise in body or spirit to sing, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People."
Our offering words are from Naomi King. Somos una gente del arco iris. We are a rainbow people. Together, what we give heals and transforms the world. This is our covenant, our bridge of heaven, our dream and our reality. The flame of the chalice lit around the world is the source of light and the pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. The flame of that chalice is filled with the light we bring and nurtured by our hopes and dreams. We know the rainbow begins with you and me. Let us grow the rainbow again today. We will now accept the offering.
For our closing words, I quote the Reverend Kendall Gibbons. For in the end, if our liberal faith teaches us nothing else, surely it teaches us this, that there is no us or them, that only evil ever results from thinking that humanity can be divided into those who matter and those who don't. We're in it together. For whatever this life and this world are worth, the doors to injustice open wide whenever we start to believe that there are any people who need not be treated in ways that we have agreed to treat each other. All people are our neighbors. No matter where they live, we share the air and the atmosphere, the seas, the music, and the stock market fluctuations. The earth is our commonwealth, and it is only when we welcome one another that we are just, and only when we are just that we are secure. We have only one shared future on this planet, either our capacity for competition, it will kill us, or our capacity for cooperation, which will save us.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again. Please remain seated as Paula plays the postlude, and then please join us. Folk have brought wonderful cookies, even though Nora and Don have left. There are cookies I see, and coffee, and tea, and whatever else. See you later.